It's 2025, and if you're a software engineer and you don't know that Poland is one of the best countries to be based in and work as a software engineer, you need to upgrade your understanding of the market. Because, yes, in 2025, Poland is probably the best country in Europe for software engineers and everyone in IT and tech, really. In this video, I will provide you the main reasons why this is the case in such a way that is not anywhere else on the internet, pretty much. I am Nicola Madio. I'm the author of The European Engineer, the #1 newsletter for tech careers in Europe, with over 11,000 subscribers. I am active on LinkedIn since only 1 year, and I have over 40,000 followers there. I mostly talk about tech careers in Europe, big tech, and where they have offices and are hiring in Europe, high-paid remote careers for tech people, as well as personal finance, FIRE, financial independence and retire early, side hustles for tech people, taxes, lifestyle optimization, including cost of living, taxation, and life quality, and also about several locations in Europe which are attractive for developers to be based in. Now, let's start from this actually. What determines the attractiveness of a location for someone in tech? Let's focus on Europe because this is where I am from and based. I'm originally from Italy, currently based in Switzerland. I've also lived in Spain, Germany, and spent a lot of time in Central and Eastern Europe, as well as visited most of European countries. Let's analyze where in Europe is attractive, but instead of going through all the countries, let's just say what does a country need to be attractive in 2025 for software developers. So we need a good quality of life because we want to have a good life, most likely. We want to have good salaries because we want to have good money, but we don't just want to have good salary, we also want to have a good purchasing power, meaning that we can do a lot with the salary we get. And we also want to be able to probably save some money because we want to build up some wealth to give us option later on in our career and life, maybe retire early, maybe be able to start a business or something like this. We also want to have availability of good quality jobs because we want to have interesting careers, and we want to grow technically and professionally throughout our career because this can, first of all, be interesting and make our job more fun, but also make us more attractive in the market and thus increase our earning in the future as well. Now, it's hard to say what's the best location in Europe because everyone has different priorities. Priorities might change over time. You can have different strategies. For example, you can have a phase of your career when you're focused on growing your skills or maybe saving a lot of money, and maybe another phase where you want to work less, or maybe where you want to start a family, and then different variables related to having a family come into play. So it's very hard to say what's the best country for everyone or to make a ranking, objective ranking of the best countries in Europe. By the way, I have made a few rankings or some list of countries in my newsletter. So if you're interested in that, you can just go to my newsletter, The European Engineer, and you will find some articles on that, and you will find some ideas. But today I want to focus on Poland because Poland has some features that make it kind of interesting across the board, and it has a lot of attractive aspects. So the context is that all the countries in the areas of Central Europe, by Central Europe I mean between Western Europe and Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe I mean Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, this area here. And Western Europe, I mean older Europe. So, for example, Germany, France, Italy. I would say Austria for me is also Western Europe. Northern Europe, I also consider Western Europe, Scandinavia in particular. And for me, Central Europe is all this area in between. So basically the Baltics and Poland and the Balkans, maybe Turkey. So basically these ex-Soviet countries that then have gained independence in the last couple of decades and have developed their own economy and so on. These countries are very attractive for tech folks because given that they had good universities from the Soviet Union pretty often, I'm not an historian, so I don't know exactly why, but basically they have in the end good people in IT, they have good university as far as I understand, and they had very contained costs because they were poor countries some decades ago. So a lot of companies in IT invested them to offshore their operations because they could find good people for affordable price. So it was a prime location to outsource. So this whole region was filled with offshoring offices of tech companies, both European and American. And this meant that they became pole for IT, a lot of offices. Then local people also, when they went to study, they were like, what is the industry that is good in our country? For a lot of them, it was IT. So a lot of these people also went to study. So it's kind of like a virtuous cycle where companies invested. Because companies invested, people went to study even more. Actually, companies invested because there were qualified people already. And then since company invested, even more people went to study that and so on. So there is a lot of talent. The cost is contained because these are not rich countries. There were not rich countries. There still are not, but they're much more richer than they were some decades ago. And that's why they are basically IT poles nowadays, IT hubs, tech hubs. Moreover, these countries have had very different immigration policies than Western Europe in the last decade. In addition to other variables that also I'm not too aware, this is not my area of expertise, but at the end of the day, these places are much safer on a day-to-day basis than your Germany, France, Sweden. You have much lower crime. You are much more safe to walk around during night, either if you're a girl or a man. So they are pretty comfortable to live in this regard. And they are also quite developed at the end of the day. They are not so underdeveloped as they were some decades ago. Nowadays, you find pretty much anything in these places. You have shopping convenience, you have good healthcare, either private or public in some cases, and you have good infrastructure, good roads. Depends, of course. Like I'm talking about a spread out area, but some places more than others. And another very important thing to mention is that salaries in IT, as I've mentioned briefly in other videos, they are local. So you will get paid more in the US than in Europe, than in Eastern Europe. But they are less local than other professions like law or health or doctors. If you're a doctor in Serbia or in Germany or in the US in California, the salaries that you can get is extremely different. Like it doesn't even compare. But if you are a developer, especially if you are a top developer, your salary will be actually not so different. With a few exceptions made, like in all these three places, you can make six figures as a software engineer. Whereas as a doctor is not really like that. And this means that basically the role that these people play in their societies is much different. If you are a software engineer in the US, you can be a normal six-figure person like anyone else. Even UBS truck drivers, they make six figures in the US nowadays. So you are not really rich there, kind of. And everything is expensive. So your money doesn't go that far. Unless if you are like a really top developer in Silicon Valley making $500,000 or more, then you are kind of rich also there. But it's quite tough to get there. And if you are also a well-paid developer in Western Europe, I would say it's almost the worst because you don't get huge salaries and you get really high taxes. You live in a different society, like a more egalitarian society. So if that's what you value, it can be okay. Especially if you have a family, some people seem to be happy about that, even though the safety can be a concern. And also the degrading services in some cases, including healthcare and so on, or schools are not as good as they once were in Western Europe, as far as I understand, especially in Italy, where I'm from, but also in Germany, as I've heard. And if you are a software engineer in Central Europe, actually, you are kind of in the top 1% of the country. So you can afford a lot. You can pretty much live a luxurious lifestyle. And this means that you have it quite well in the entire region in Central Europe. You can have it quite well, and by this I mean you can have a very good purchasing power, like your money goes a lot. You can have a luxurious lifestyle. In some places, I mean, you can even have a personal driver if you want, or you can always order food or go to private healthcare every time you need, or things like this. You can have cleaning ladies or help in the house and things like that. This is what I mean by high purchasing power. And you can also have pretty good savings, because if you are, especially if you're a top developer, you work in big tech or you work with a high paid remote company, you can also save quite a bit. Like, this is another very important variable of this region. Usually compared to Western Europe, you have the lowest taxes in Central Europe among these three regions. if your salary is somewhat high, you get to retain quite a lot of that. And this scales also in size of the family. Even if you have a big family, it won't eat up so much of your salary. Whereas, for example, if you're in Switzerland or if you're in New York or California, if you have a family, the costs are going to skyrocket. In Switzerland, where I'm based, having a kid at kindergarten costs you around 3K per month, francs, so euros pretty much. And this is quite a lot. If you do the math, if you have 2 kids, that's 6K already for kids, just for the kindergarten, not even for food at home or rent. And 6K is what you get after taxes if you are making 100K in Switzerland. So this just to give you an idea. And it's not like in Switzerland you're going to make 500K as a software engineer compared to Central Europe where you are going to make 30K. I know a lot of people making 100, 150K in Switzerland, and to be honest, quite a few people making more than 100K also in Central Europe. So that's why this region is quite attractive in this sense. Financially, it makes a lot of sense, and the quality of life is very good. At the beginning, I mentioned also the historical factors. This also is very important because I mentioned how a lot of tech companies invested in the region and how there is a lot of jobs and a lot of people also, a lot of skilled developers. They are hubs, tech hubs. And this means that very good companies, very high-paying companies, big tech American companies have opened offices in the region and they continue to expand. This is actually the area where they expand the most in Europe and one of the areas, together with India, where they expand the most in the world. And this is very important because it means that you have a lot of top-paying companies there. Of course, they pay local salaries, but as I mentioned, they can even be six-figure salaries. And in other regions, you have fewer companies like this. I have a job board, eurotoptechjobs.com. You can find the link in the comments. And there, every week, I do analytics on where the jobs are. And for example, the top 3 cities are always London, which has 8 million people living there. Dublin, which is a tech hub, also because of the taxes, incentives that multinational companies have. And the third is Warsaw, like close to Dublin, actually, even if it's just 2 million people compared to London, for example. And Krakow is also in the top 10. It's actually 8 on the list. And this tells you that, and my job board, like just for some context, tracks top-paying jobs, top-paying tech jobs in Europe. And what this means is that these cities in Poland, but also in Romania or in Serbia, for example, they have a lot of jobs from top-paying companies. It means that it's easier to get a top job there than somewhere else in Europe or even in the US, where right now it's completely fucked. You can check my previous video on the state of the US market right now, which is pretty bad for most people. In addition to this, the high availability of top-paying companies, you also have another variable, which is the low competition, because many people still think that these countries are shitholes, right? And they don't plan to go work there. I never, for example, when I graduated some years ago, no one told me, try to go work in Ukraine or try to go work in Poland or something like that. People told me study German. That's what people tell in Italy, right? When I was younger, 10 years ago, maybe. Oh, study German, try to go work in Germany. That's where the jobs are and so on. Or maybe go to Switzerland. And that's how more or less I ended up in Switzerland. And it's competitive, because everyone knows that Switzerland has high salaries. So you need to do a lot of work. Like for me to get a big tech jobs, I worked in Oracle Switzerland, Oracle Zurich, was really hard because there are just a few big tech companies in Zurich. Everyone in Europe applies there. And so it's quite competitive. It took me like quite a lot of effort and time. Whereas no one wants to go work in Belgrade, for example, or in Bucharest, or in Warsaw or Krakow. Now it's changing a bit, but a lot of people don't know. So you have a lot of less competition. It's much easier to enter Google Warsaw than entering Google Zurich, for example. So it's easier to access these jobs. That's why one of the reasons why this entire region is very good for tech people. With all of this out of the way, saying why Poland is actually great is very easy, because Poland, in my opinion, and not just my opinion, is the best country in the region for tech workers. And the region is good for all of these reasons, and Poland just checks all these boxes that I just mentioned. In particular, it has a very good quality of life. It is a very developed country. The infrastructure is top-notch. nothing to envy to Germany. In most areas, maybe, I don't know, schools or healthcare hospitals, depending on exactly which city you live in, you might have it a bit worse. But if you are in the big cities, you have it pretty well, especially in Warsaw and Krakow. You have a pretty Western standard of living. And in addition to this, you have it actually better. You have more safety, much more safety in these cities than in Berlin, Munich, Paris, which is quite important at the end of the day in your day-to-day life. You also have more optimism because these countries are growing a lot. So you have a lot of new restaurants that pop up, new bars, people that come in, a lot of skilled immigrations of people going there to work jobs or start companies. So there is a very energetic environment and a lot of things to do as well. And you can also access everything luxurious in this location. For example, you can go to private clinics if you need healthcare. You can send your kids to private school if you want English education, international education at affordable prices. So you can have it pretty well. In Poland, like all of these things, you can find really high quality. Also, the connections are very good. In the big cities, the airport are very well connected and very good. Taxation can also be very good, depending exactly on how you work. If you work as a freelancer, which a lot of developers do in the area, like if you have a remote job or a local job, you can work often as a freelancer. And this way you get paid around 15% total taxes, including social security or less. Whereas if you work for local jobs as a full-time employee, which is what is required if you work in big tech, for big tech companies like Google or Nvidia or Rippling or Atlassian or companies like this, then you will have a full-time contract, and here you pay a bit more taxes, but you also have more security, like it's harder to fire you and so on. But the taxes are not so crazy because these companies, they pay you in a base salary, so you have a monthly salary, plus you have a bonus and you have stocks. And usually in this location, they give a lot of stocks because they are taxed less. In particular, in Poland, you get taxed only 19% on your stock part of the salary. This means that you can, for example, if you get like a 100K offer, oftentimes it will be 50K stocks and 50K salary and bonus, which means that half of it will be taxed at 20%. Maybe the other 50K will be taxed at 30 or 35%, which means that you will get taxed at 26 maybe total on your total compensation. So 26% for a full-time job at 6 figures, especially in this region, in my opinion, is very good taxes. In Germany, for a similar job condition, you would get taxed at 36 plus percent. So yeah, even in Switzerland, which is the lowest tax place in Europe, pretty much for full-time employees, you will get also taxed at 26, 30 in some cases. I was making 200K more or less per year in Switzerland, and I was taxed at around 30%. So it's very convenient in this sense. You have a lot of companies. As I mentioned, Warsaw is the first city in Europe for a number of big tech jobs openings. So you have a lot of jobs, a lot of big tech jobs, constantly growing. All the big techs are opening an office in Poland pretty much at this point. You also have Waymo or Netflix. Waymo is a self-driving car company that was born from Google, and Netflix, Netflix. And these companies, for example, Warsaw is the only place where they hire people in Europe. So they even have some niche opportunities like that. So all in all, this is just the first video I want to make on this maybe geo aspect of tech careers in Europe. And I gave an introduction on why location is important in your tech career. If you're curious about why location is important, you can also, again, check my newsletter. I have a few articles there. One is location planning, strategic location planning for software engineers, strategic location planning on Google and the European Engineer, and it should just pop out. Or you can even go to the European Engineer. I will find the link down and just look for this article. So location strategy is important. That's what we talked about at the beginning of the video. Some locations are better than others, depends a little bit on your priorities, but some locations offer are an all-in-all better deal than others. And in particular, in Europe, Central Europe is a prime location right now in 2025. And I think it might be even better going forward because the trend is positive. And among the countries in the region. Before I also explain why this region is good and how we got here and what are some good features. And in the region, I highlighted Poland as, in my opinion, the best hub for tech workers going forward, because you have high salary relatively, kind of Western Europe's level salary, high availability of big tech companies, contained taxes, very high quality of living and standard of living comparable to Western Europe, but more safe. And in my opinion, is a great option. So the only caveat in Poland is the weather. So if you don't like cold, gray weather, then Poland is not optimal. In that case, I would recommend Spain, that for similar reasons, so like affordable costs of developer and so on, but also stable country, has become a hub as well and has seen a surge in big tech companies expanding there. I also worked in Spain for Amazon in Barcelona, but in addition to Amazon, they really have all the companies at this point. They have Apple in Barcelona as well. You have Microsoft a bit everywhere. Amazon has a big office both in Barcelona and Madrid. You have Datadog hiring everywhere in Spain. And Rippling, New Relic, you have a lot of companies. You can check all of them on my job board, Eurotop Tech Jobs. But yeah, if you want sun, then I would recommend Spain for ease and availability of top paying jobs, which also can reach high levels. Even if you are in Spain, you can make easily 100K as a mid-level engineer in big tech, both in Spain and Poland, and even Belgrade, and I think Romania a bit less, Bucharest, but you can still make 70K as a mid-level engineer. As a senior big tech engineers, you can make six figures everywhere in Europe, pretty much, where you land a job. In a lot of these places, if you are quite senior, like staff or senior staff, you can make 200K or more, even in Spain or in Poland, doesn't matter. So yeah, if you don't like the weather, maybe you can consider Spain, I guess. Other than that, Poland, I don't think it has a lot of problems. There is recently a bit of tension, as you might think already, like regarding to the geopolitical risks and the nearby war in Ukraine. That said, I don't think Poland poses very high risks in that regard right now, for a few reasons. I'm not an expert at all on this topic, so do your own research. But from my understanding, the war is going to be contained in Ukraine for now. Now with Trump, it's very likely that they'll reach a deal and that the war will be stopped there, at least for now and for the foreseeable future. Later on, Poland has a very strong army as well, is set to become one of the most powerful countries in Europe for sure, one of the most powerful on the military aspect. If not already, it might become the most powerful army in Europe, I think, in the next 5 years, probably. So it works quite well as a deterrent for any kind of invasion, as well as being part of NATO and having a lot of US bases in the area. So I don't think there is a concrete threat right now. Even if things can change a lot nowadays, in this field. So this might be a risk long term or something that you need to closely monitor and be flexible in case things start to go in the wrong direction, to pack your stuff and go. But for now, I would say it's pretty good, as well as other countries in the area like Serbia or Romania. I think all these countries are a bit safe right now. But differently from Poland, I would say Serbia is a bit more unstable right now with the local politics. So there is a lot of protests for the current president and so on. And Romania also has had their election cancelled. So they are a bit more unstable locally, I would say. Whereas Poland now has a pretty pro-EU and a stable government. There was a bit of uncertainty with the transition between the previous one and the current one. Some discussions around corruption, but not very huge. I mean, this is something to monitor a bit more. I would say the political situation in the area is not perfect, but where is it perfect nowadays? Like if you look at the other countries in Europe, is also far from perfect at this point. This is something you can take into account. Maybe the only country doing better in this regard is Switzerland, which is quite stable, but it's a completely different way of working as a country. It's not a powerful country. It's just a small country, and it's different. But all in all, I would say you should be safe going there, but do your own research, of course. And yeah, I think for today's is all, actually. Let me know what you think. Have you ever considered moving to Poland, or what is your favorite country to work as a software engineer? I have also another document that I will link as well below, where I gather salaries and cost of living and some details like this for software engineers or tech workers in general in Europe. You can check there are more than 700 contributions already. And if you want, you are welcome to contribute as well, anonymously, of course. And other than that, I will see you in the next video. If you don't follow me on LinkedIn, I invite you to do so. I post there every day, and if you want, you can check out my job board with the private guides to land top jobs in Europe. It's called Euro Top Tech Jobs. You can check out my newsletter, The European Engineer. You can subscribe here if you like this kind of videos, and I'll see you in the next one.